Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Today's video is all about my November wrap-up, and we're going to finally find out whether the Giant TBR is under 200 books. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. In today's video we're going to be wrapping up all of the reads that I did in November, which was a lot of reading. And if you watched my TBR, you will know that I was trying to get my Giant physical TBR down below 200, firmly down below 200, so that if I got any books for Christmas, I wouldn't go back over 200. So we shall see by the end of the video whether I made it. So in the middle of the month I did make a video, a Saturday Reads, where I talked about the 4 books that I'd read at that point. So when we get to those books I won't talk about them quite as much as the others. Before we get into the wrap up, I wanted to mention a couple of plans for December, as I haven't mentioned them anywhere else. In December I didn't really feel that I would be able to cope with a whole Vlogmas, but I have decided to put out 3 videos a week in the run up to Christmas. Also, over on Instagram, I wanted to do something to be a daily countdown, a bit of an advent calendar, if you will. So I decided to do an advent calendar of loads of my favourite books from back when I was a child, from now. The only thing is I haven't included any books from this year, so these are all favourites from the rest of my life before this year. So I hope you'll check that out over on Instagram. I will link my Instagram down below, and that will be happening every day up until Christmas Eve. I have also slightly added to my TBR since I made my TBR video last week. I do seem to have taken on a few read-alongs. First one is I'm going to be reading the Iliad by Homer. And I have added a few tabs to this. Don't worry Mum, they're not permanent because my mum lent me this yesterday. Hello Harry. Hello. Have you stopped scratching things now? Yeah? Do you think you could not stand right there? You can go on the table. In December I plan to read the Iliad by Homer with the Eclectic Bookclub. This book club is being run by Shelly Swearingen and David Wiley. We've got a Voxer group to talk about this. I wasn't going to take on books that I didn't have on my own shelf, as you know, in December, but I decided that the opportunity to read the Iliad with other people will be really motivating and encouraging. And I don't think that, even though I love Greek mythology and I've enjoyed books involving the Greeks and the Trojans and the Trojan War, I don't think I will read this without the push of reading it with other people. So what's another book among friends? I've decided to read this, and hopefully I will be able to keep up with it and read this in December with a good group of people. The second book I've decided to break all the rules for is A Christmas Carol. I've also borrowed this from my mum. Amazingly, I haven't actually read A Christmas Carol yet. I thought I would join in with a read-along that Katie over at Books and Things is running, called A Dickens Along, where she and others are going to read A Christmas Carol one stave at a time over a period of a couple of weeks. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I can't wait to see how similar it is to Muppets Christmas Carol, which is one of my all-time favourite films. Yeah, really looking forward to this one as well. I am also planning on reading at least some of the lyrical ballads by Coleridge and Wordsworth. This is with a poetry book club, which is also being run by David Wiley and Aaron Facer. I will link everybody's channels in the description box down below, so if you've heard of any read-alongs here that you would like to join, please do go and check those guys out. The part of lyrical ballads I'm really excited about is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, because I have had this read to me before, but I don't think I've read it myself. I may have taken on too much, but oh well. Anyway, how did I get on in November? In November I was participating in 2 readathons, Non-Fiction November and Novellas in November, and I had 2 buddy reads. And my main target was to read as many of my smaller books as I possibly could to try and get through my Giant TBR backlog. Now, I've had a pretty prolific reading month. There's a pigeon on the hedge, so Harry's making his scary sound. You gonna go and get that pigeon? You are? Anyway, quite a prolific reading month for me. I read 15 books in total. 11 of those were books off the giant bookshelf. 3 were audiobooks and 1 was a reread. I did pretty well in sticking to what I said I would do. The only book I didn't get to at all was No Middle Name by Lee Child. This is a book of short stories that I thought I might not get to, and I didn't get to it. I am still currently reading one book from November, and that is The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. I got this in the BookTube Spin Round 4, and I have read the other book that I got in the spin, but I haven't finished reading this one yet. So I am I'm just over halfway through with The Day of the Triffids. I've actually got the audiobook for free as well on Audible. It's part of their catalogue that they allow you to access for free. So I've been part reading this and part listening to it. It's really good so far, but it's not finished, so I won't count it in this wrap up. So on to the books that I have read. This month I thought I would tell you about them in order, but I will still tell you whether I thought they were okay, good, or in my favourites of the month. To start off the month, I started with a graphic novel, and it's The Walking Dead Volume 1 Days Gone By. I've already talked about this in another video. I loved it, and I definitely want to read the next one, and I'm currently binge rewatching the TV series. Definitely going to carry on with this graphic novel series. I would say that this would be in my very good category. My second book of the month was my buddy read with Becky over at Teacup the Storyteller. Highly recommend Becky's channel. If you haven't checked it out yet, please go and do so. It will be linked in the description down below. We read together What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami, and we both loved it. It's a great work of non-fiction, bit of a memoir of running and writing, and my only complaint about this one was I would have liked it to be even a bit longer because it was really, really interesting. Thirdly, and I spoke about this one quite extensively in my mid-month video, is The A to Z of Everything by Debbie Johnson. I liked this a lot more than I was expecting to, and I would put this in the good category. And I would put Murakami in very good category. So Fight Club I've also already talked about. Loved it. I would put this in the very good category as well. If you like the film of Fight Club, you will undoubtedly like this book. Next, I reread The Murder on the Orient Express. I reread this with Christie Fest, and I still absolutely loved it. It's definitely a favourite of the month. After that, I read Agatha Christie Malowan's archaeological memoir, Come Tell Me How You Live. This is all about Agatha Christie and her second husband going on archaeological digs in the Middle East in the 1930s, and it was a really interesting memoir. I wouldn't say there was as much about finding things as I thought. There's not really very much about finds. It's mostly about their day-to-day life in the Middle East, and that is very, very interesting. I just wouldn't put it in my favourites of the month. I would put this in very good. Oh, what am I going to say about this book? This is definitely a favourite of the month, The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. I buddy read this with the lovely Gemma over at Gem of Books, and I can't recommend Gem's channel highly enough. She says it like it is, and her reviews for me are just perfectly ranty, and her dog Rudy has been participating in videos recently, and yeah, I just absolutely love Gemma's content. I hope you'll go and check out her channel in the description down below. Anyway, Gem and I read The Art of Racing in the Rain together, and this is a lovely story about Enzo the dog. And Enzo is the narrator, and he tells us all about his family, Denny and Zoe, Denny's wife Eve, and unfortunately for them it's a very, very sad story. Hello Harry, did you like Enzo? Would you like a dog friend? Enzo just tells this story so beautifully and poignantly, and in such a dog style of writing as well, that it was absolutely perfect. I don't know what else to say about it. This book absolutely broke me in terms of emotionally. You know from the very start that it's going to be sad, but how sad it is and how sad it is throughout, I just can't describe. It also at points made Gemma and I quite angry and also made us laugh out loud. We had the full range of emotions while reading this book. I love this as a buddy read because I was able to talk to Gemma every day, or nearly every day, about this book as we came to its conclusion. I'd highly recommend this to everyone who feels that they can cope with it, but be warned, sad things will happen. My favourite part of this is definitely the evil zebra, and when you read it you'll find out more about who the evil zebra is. It was absolutely hilarious at that point. So highly recommend this. It may well be one of my favourite books of the year, but we'll have to wait and see what else I read before the end of the year. This is a strong contender though for my favourite. Absolutely loved this book. So the next book that I finished was actually an audiobook, and I have been listening to my audiobook of Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens, but I had to put it on pause for a little while this month because I just needed something a bit lighter to listen to, and I kept finding that I was only listening to Our Mutual Friend for like 5 minutes a day before I fell asleep, and that was making me miss the point of it a lot, so I put it on hold for a little while. I'm definitely going to keep going back to it because I love it. Foolishly decided to listen to a book called Friend Request. I can't actually remember the author's name. I know it was Laura. I'll put the picture up here. Friend Request was not a great audiobook. I had to listen to it on quite a fast speed because the narrator was reading it very slowly, which is unusual for me. I usually listen to audiobooks on normal speed. And yeah, I just found this story very cliche. It had the usual, oh, I've done something really bad in the past, and like trying to hook you in to find out what it was, but the character wasn't really someone you could care about properly, so unfortunately not a great read. It's basically a book about a woman who gets a friend request from someone who she believes to be dead, who she sort of got involved in bullying at school. And it deals with her guilt, and it deals with what's happening to her in the present day, but also has the timeline of when they were at school. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments down below, but I didn't really enjoy Friend Request, and I would only put this in my okay category. Next book I read was another physical book, and it was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. I don't really know what to say about Slaughterhouse-Five either, because this is the story of Billy Pilgrim, who is predominantly in this book a prisoner of war in the Second World War, but he also travels through time. He also has an encounter with a race of aliens. Yeah, I thought I would enjoy this a lot more than I did. I normally really like time travel. Billy Pilgrim's story was certainly not one of my favourites. One of the things that annoyed me the most was the repetition of the phrase, "so it goes." I do understand that that was for a reason, but I didn't want the phrase "so it goes" on every single page. I didn't want to read it like what felt like 1,000 times. The best word I can use to describe this one is strange. I would probably put this in the very low end of my good category. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me. I know this book is well liked, but I also know people who haven't liked it at all. So I come somewhere in the middle. I feel a bit ambivalent about Slaughterhouse-Five. I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I don't particularly have strong feelings about it now, and I don't think I will read it again. At the same time that I was reading Slaughterhouse-Five, and I think this is one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought, I was also listening to Fahrenheit 451, and unfortunately when comparing the two, Slaughterhouse-Five for me loses. So Fahrenheit 451 is well known as a book about book burning, and it takes place in a dystopian future society, and it reminded me a lot of the book 1984, which I read earlier this year, also on audiobook, and which I didn't really enjoy very much. I thought the dystopian world in Fahrenheit 451 was much more interestingly done by Bradbury, and I think what Bradbury did better than Orwell, in my opinion only, was that in his world we weren't subjected to endless exposition of what the world is like. For me, that was a big letdown with 1984. In Fahrenheit 451, we're launched straight into the action. We learn about the world immediately through Guy Montag, the main character, and his fire crew. In this dystopian future world, Montag and the other firemen no longer put out fires, they create fires, and they set fires when people are reported to have books. So, for bookworms like myself, this is a pretty terrifying glimpse into a future that doesn't value literature and that only values giant walls of television, and the people do appear in this book to have stopped thinking. It's a pretty chilling vision of the future. The audiobook was read by Tim Robbins, who narrated this really, really well. He was perfect for the voice of Montag. I would recommend Fahrenheit 451. It would be probably my very good category, I would say. I actually read this for the Eclectic Bookclub. All the details of that are in the description down below. Next, I read Notebook by Tom Cox. This is a lovely book of non-fiction writing by Tom Cox. It's snippets from his notebooks, some of them really funny, some of them are very descriptive of nature and very beautiful. What I really enjoyed about Notebook is that Tom Cox writes more in this one about the area of the world which I'm from, which is Norfolk. I really, really enjoyed the sections about Norfolk and Norwich in particular, and there's some really lovely writing about where I come from in here, which I loved. I really enjoy Tom Cox's sort of wry humour and the way he looks at the world. It wouldn't be a Tom Cox book without him mentioning crisps. This is a book that didn't take me very long to read, but every moment of reading it was really, really enjoyable. Definitely put this in my favourites of the month. After reading Notebook, I realised that I had 4 books left to read and 4 days left to read them. Feeling a little bit stressed, I decided to take a bit of a reading day. So at the weekend, I started trying to get through the rest of the books. I read 2 novellas on Saturday. One was Cleaning the Gold by Karen Slaughter and Lee Child, and one was The Furthest Station by Ben Aronovich. This first one is a collaboration between 2 thriller authors who I love. It combines the characters of Jack Reacher, who you know is one of my favourites, and Will Trent, who is one of Karen Slaughter's characters. I don't love Will Trent. He's not my favourite character that Karen Slaughter writes. I was quite surprised to find that this wasn't even really novella length. I thought it was 120 pages, but it turned out the last 40 pages of it were an extract from Karen Slaughter's new book. This was only 80 pages. It was okay. There just wasn't really much to this, and although it had 2 characters that I really like in it, there just wasn't enough for them to do in this for it to be a really good story. So that was a shame, but never mind. I would probably have to put that in okay because there wasn't enough of it. If it had been a longer story, I think they could have taken it up to good level, but no. Then I read The Furthest Station by Ben Aronovich. This is a really great book. It's a novella in the Rivers of London series. I really love this series. It's urban fantasy. It's about a policeman called PC Grant who investigates supernatural sort of things. He's in a police unit that deals with things like ghosts and magic. I really like the idea of like magic cops, and I really enjoy this series. This was a fun novella, mainly about ghosts, and I had a really good time reading this one. No complaints. It has made me really want to go back to the series because it made me remember how much I like the characters. So I would put this in good to very good. Also over the weekend, I finished a book that I was buddy reading with Julie from Hungry Bookworm. And I will tell you what the book is, but this is a book that Julie and I read as a Christmas collaboration, and my review of this and Julie's review of this will be out in the week of Christmas. We tried to be Christmassy by reading a Christmas mystery, The Santa Claus Murder, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it at all because it's going to be my first solo review video. You'll have to wait and see about that one. And the last book I actually finished this month was definitely 100% my favourite of the month. It's possibly even a favourite of the year. Along with The Art of Racing in the Rain. So I guess I had a favourite fiction, which was The Art of Racing in the Rain, and a favourite non-fiction, which was this wonderful, wonderful book. So I've showed you it a few times. It's very, very beautiful. and it's called Dear Reader, The Comfort and Joy of Books by Cathy Rentzenbrink. I absolutely adored this book. I recently made a video with my top 5 books about reading and books about books, and I would say this has gone into top place, or at least joint top place, with Bookworm, which I also read this year. It's just so poignant and emotional, and it has more to this book of books than just books. So not only did I love the books that Cathy Rentzenbrink talked about, and not only did I again make a list of books that I would like to read from reading this, but she also talks about her life and very sad events that have happened in it. But she also takes us through her career being a bookseller, how she progressed through that career to where she is now. And I found that part absolutely fascinating. I loved hearing about how she once fell over on the way to work because she was trying to finish reading the latest Minette Walters, and she was just hooked, so she was trying to read it walking along. And she wrote that story on a recommendations card to go on the shelf in her job in Harrods book department. And the book flew off the shelves. I love the way she starts this book by talking about books that when she's organising her shelves she decides to reread. She talks about Daphne du Maurier. She also talks about the Chronicles of Narnia. Now that's kind of an introduction, and then the next chapter, just absolutely perfect start. Starts with, last night I dreamt I went to Narnia again. I stood under the lamppost, felt the snow crunch under my feet, and shivered despite the warmth of my fur coat. Absolutely incredible. Love it. I love the combination of Rebecca and Narnia, and I love the way Cathy Rentzenbrink writes throughout this book. She is an amazing author that I've not yet discovered, and she has 2 other sort of memoirish books, which I definitely will be on the lookout for, even though they sound very sad. This is absolutely a new favourite, so fantastic read to end the month with. And it's been a really happy month of reading, as you can see. I don't think there have been many books in that pile that I didn't like. I actually would overall say that I liked every single thing that I read this month, apart from possibly a couple of the audiobooks. All of these books that have sat on my shelf, in some cases for years, but in the case of this book only since my birthday in June, they were brilliant. I really enjoyed Non-Fiction November. I read all 4 of the books that I set out to read, and all of the non-fiction that I read was great and made me want to read more non-fiction. I really enjoyed Novellas in November. I would like to get hold of some more novellas to read because it's a great length of book. So both of those readathons were really successful, and I would join them again. We have just one more thing left to talk about today, and that is of course the Giant TBR. At the end of November I was at the number 204. I read this month from my shelf a whopping 11 books, and that means that my new total is 193 books. I genuinely, honestly haven't been down below 200 with my Giant TBR in years. I don't actually remember the last time my TBR numbered below 200 books, so I want to stay there. I've been saying to my husband, the more that I read from my shelves, the more I just want to keep reading from my shelves, and I keep getting amazing recommendations from all my friends on BookTube. I keep getting good recommendations from my mum, and although I do want to read all those books, the success of getting the TBR down and seeing those numbers go down is making me not want to buy books. Do I want more books for Christmas? I do, because I always do want books. I always do love books, but I'm below 200 and I want to go lower. I don't want the number to go back up again, so yeah, it's a bit of an interesting place to be in. Anyway, yeah, so in December I will be bringing you 3 videos a week, and I hope you'll join me for some of those. I hope if you've enjoyed this video today you will give it a like, and you will consider subscribing if you haven't already. As always, please do comment down below, let me know how you got on with your reading in November and what you think of my Giant TBR number. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll all join me again soon for another video all about books here on Alice in the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.